Lesson 138, circle graphs. So we've come to our third type of graph that we're going to spend some time looking at, and these are circle graphs, also known as pie graphs. And these are the ones that show parts of a whole. So a circle graph shows parts of a whole. And we do that using a circle that is split into fractioned off sections. So let's imagine that I gave a survey of the class, and let's pretend that you all have pets. I don't know if you all do or not. And this was the result of my survey. This is the visual representation of my data set. 50% of you had dogs, 30% had cats, 15% have bunnies. I know some of you have bunnies, and then 5% of you had some other type of pet. Maybe a couple of you have a rat or a snake or a bird or something. Okay, so this is the breakdown of the pets in the 6B class that I'm imagining. Now, 50% of the class had dogs, so half of my circle graph is shaded in as being the dog section. Now, you should know that there are not 100 people in grade 6B. There are 28 people in grade 6B. So the total is 28 people, which means that only 14 people would have dogs based on this chart. So 14 would be the same as 50% of the students. Okay, so we're going to have to do some number conversions to be able to create a circle graph, because odds are your group of people that you have surveyed is not going to be an even 100 number of, or 100 people. So if you look at the worksheet that I put up on the website, I also emailed it to your parents, so you can either have that printed out or just on the screen in front of you. It's a two-sided worksheet, or there's 2 pages to it. So flip to the page or look at the page online that has the favorite kind of pizza. I have recreated the chart here on this screen. So the favorite kind of pizza: cheese, pepperoni, Hawaiian, veggie, and meat lovers. Okay, so this is a recreation of what you should have in front of you. So imagine that there has been another survey. You asked 500 students what their favorite type of pizza is, and these were the results. 120 thought cheese was their favorite, 170 pepperoni, etc., etc. Okay? Now, in order to make a circle graph from this data set, we need to convert these values into percents, right? Just like with the pet example, 50% of people had dogs, and that was 14. So the original chart said probably 14, and then you'd have to convert it into a percent. And the way that you do that is a way that we have done before when we learned about percents. All you have to do is think about each number as a number out of the total. So you could think of this as 120 out of 500, or think of that as a ratio, 120 to 500, and hopefully you remember that the way to convert that to a percent is you just do the top number divided by the bottom number. Now for today's lesson, you're going to be doing a lot of calculations, so if you'd like to use a calculator for it, that's fine, just to speed things along. Just make sure that you're punching in things accurately. So if you do 120 divided by 15, not 15, I don't know where that number came from, 500, you should come up with 0.24. And remember, that is the decimal form of our percent. So the way that we change that into a percent is we bump that decimal over, and we get that 24% of those 500 students prefer cheese pizza. And you follow the exact same steps for all the rest of the numbers in your data set to get the percents. So for this next one, you do 170 divided by 500, and you'll come up with 34%, etc., etc. I'll leave the rest for you to do on your own. That's simple enough to do. Okay, so to find the percentages, top number divided by bottom number. So the individual amount divided by the total. And a way to check that you have done that correctly is all the numbers in your percent column should add up to 100%. Just like the numbers of students here will add up to 500, the percents should add up to 100, or at least pretty close to 100. In some cases, you may have to round, so it might not end up like it did over here as a nice 0.24. Maybe it'd be 0.2478, etc., etc. Then you'd have to round, so it might be close to 100, but not exactly if you had to round. But that's a good way to check if you're on the right track for that part of the section of it anyways. Now, if we go back to our pets over here, there is one added step you have to do to make a circle graph. And here you have to think even farther back to our units on geometry and angles. 50% is not the same as 50 degrees. Okay, hopefully you remember that a circle, back to pen, is 360 degrees around. So half of that circle is 180 degrees. So in order to fit these percents into our circle graph, we actually have to convert them into degrees. So that's the second step here. And all you have to do to convert the percents to degrees is think about remembering our percent times whole equals part. What you're really trying to find is the percent of 360. Okay, so if your whole amount is 360 and we want to know the part, so for cheese pizza, let's do that one, we want to know what 24% of 360 is. All you have to do is multiply the decimal form of that percentage times 360 to get your degrees. And once again, you can do that on your calculator and you will end up with 86 degrees. And then for pepperoni pizza, you would do the same thing except for with 0.34. So you're multiplying it by 360 and you'll end up with 122 degrees. So once you have your percents figured out, you can use that to figure out your degree values because you'll need those to be able to section off your circle correctly. And then just like the other columns, the numbers in this column should add up to 360 degrees or at least close if you had to do some rounding. So that's another good thing to check. All right, on to actually making the circle graph. So what you have on your paper is a circle that looks like this with a dot in the middle. That's going to be your center point. I think it also has a line at the top because you need to add a title. So you could title it as favorite pizza. And then you will need your protractor to create this circle graph. So we're going to start with the cheese pizza. Now, the cheese pizza was 24% of the pizza. Not, well, I guess it does kind of look like a pizza, but 24% of our group of people. So we need to make it 24% of this circle. But we have to remember that when we are drawing our circle graph, the most important value to be looking at is the degrees. Okay, it might be tempting to look and think 24%, it needs to be 24 degrees. That's not the case. You have to be looking at the degrees. So take your protractor, oops, gotta go back to my moving, there we go, protractor, and line it up on your circle like this. Then what you're going to do is, if you travel along the bottom here, draw a little line. Let's see how accurate I can be. Ooh, pretty close. That's going to be the bottom line of your section, okay? And then you have to get to 86 degrees. So start down at the 0, travel up to about where 86 degrees would be, and then draw yourself another line at about the 86 degree mark. And then what you'll do is remove your protractor. Well, let's see if I can erase those highlight. Uh-oh, I just erased my middle point. Undo. The middle point's just going to be blue now, I guess. And what you will do is draw a line from your center point out to the edge and out to the other line that you marked right there. And then this section you need to label as cheese, and not 84 degrees, that's the size of the section, but 24% of people preferred cheese. Okay, so really all you're doing is you are creating angles within the circle. And then if you've done your math right, and if you're accurate with your protractor, you should end up with a complete circle that all the different values fit into. Now I can't spin this protractor, which is unfortunate, so you're just going to have to kind of imagine with me. Well, maybe I can draw it. Let's try drawing it. So you can imagine spinning your piece of paper around and then use this line as your bottom ray of your angle. So you take your protractor and you'd put it on just like that. And then if your 0 were here, for the next one it was, let's see, 122 degrees. You'd go till you get to 122. I don't really know where that would be. Maybe somewhere around here-ish. And then you draw your line out from there. Hopefully that makes sense to you. It's a little bit tricky for me to show here, but really just spin your paper around and use one of your other lines to be the bottom line of your new section for your angles. All right, and then if you keep doing that, you should end up with a full 360 degrees for your circle graph. If it doesn't make a ton of sense, you can always video call me and I can show you on an actual piece of paper. That might be a little bit easier for you to see, but hopefully you can figure it out without my help. But if you need my help, please call me. And that's everything for today.